My name is Tony, and this is my colleague Dustin. We are very honored and glad you can spare your time in this to spend time. You decide to spend time next 30 minutes with us. So hopefully this session is a good one for you. Brief introduction about us. My name is Tony Yuan. I work for Chick-fil-A for the past 14 years. I'm working for the analytics engineering team. What I do is I lead a foundational team that builds out a lot of the platform foundations, infrastructure as code, CI/CD, manage the support, quality engineering, data quality, software quality, and DBT best practice, Databricks best practice. That's what my team does. We build a foundation that supports our data scientists, our data engineers, and our audience team engineers.
Yep. Hey everyone, great to meet everyone and great to see everyone here. Thanks, as Tony echoed, thanks for joining us. So my name's Dustin. I work for Onyx, which is a consulting group, and we partner together with Chick-fil-A for a lot of data and AI initiatives. So I actually work pretty closely with Tony and kind of oversee and kind of help with a lot of the DBT implementations and projects across Chick-fil-A that you're going to hear about today. Been building data warehouses for a long time, over 16 years. I've authored a couple of books, including one of the only books on DBT that takes you end to end, that's written from an engineering perspective of how to implement it. This book has sold really well and helped thousands of people get started with DBT. So I assume everyone in here is probably an expert at it already, but if you're not, or if you know someone getting started, highly recommend checking that out. But yeah. Oh yeah, one thing I want to mention too, Tony, before we get started. If you guys are hungry, you're going to see lots of pictures of chicken sandwiches and stuff in this presentation. You're going to be starving by the time you're done, especially if you love Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. So this is our agenda today. We're going to talk about the importance of analytics engineering at Chick-fil-A, and we'll also introduce you how we've been doing it from the team structure to our process, and how we can how we are doing our projects in a high level, and also we're going to touch base how we are doing DBT project at Chick-fil-A. And can I ask a show of hands, how many of you have not been to Chick-fil-A? Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. So we do have several people who have never heard of Chick-fil-A, have never been to Chick-fil-A. Giving such an international software conference like this, that shouldn't be a surprise. Chick-fil-A, the tagline for our company is the home of the original chicken sandwich. A few years back, there used to be a TV commercial that just says, "We didn't invent the chicken, just the chicken sandwich." It is a fabulous quick service fast restaurant in the United States. It's a privately held company. Our founder, Chick-fil-A, opened his first store in 1967 and has been faithfully serving customers for over 50 years. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Within the Chick-fil-A's quick service restaurant business, in this business domain, we have obviously a lot of competitors. This is the chart you're seeing here is from a data compiled by Quick Service Restaurant magazine. This magazine is basically kind of industry standard magazine. It compiles all the sales information across the entire business area. Chick-fil-A, in the chicken restaurant, Chick-fil-A has several major competitors. Some of them are well known, like KFC, their international presence, Popeyes, Wingstop, Zaxby's, and Raising Cane's. These are Chick-fil-A's top 5 competitors by volume. So the number you see here is the magazine published in July of 2023, but the data is compiled using actual sales numbers in 2022. Chick-fil-A is number 1 in the chicken area. And of all the top 5 competitors that we have, the chart on the left shows the number of stores they have in the United States. And the right chart shows their sales revenue. So if you add those numbers up, for 2022, Chick-fil-A has a total store of 2,800, slightly over 2,800. Our top 5 competitors combined has 10,100 stores. Their 10,100 stores, their total sales revenue is $17.7 billion. Chick-fil-A's, out of 2,800 stores, their sales revenue is $18 billion, $18.7 billion. So Chick-fil-A made $1 billion more in sales in 2022 than all the other top 5 chicken competitors combined. And we only open 6 days a week. So we close on Sundays. That just gives you,
I was just going to say complete domination, right?
Yes, and that also translates into there's a ton of sales data, amount of data being generated. I see several colleagues here and in the audience. It's just people behind the scenes. They're working really hard in a lot of enterprise systems, supply chain systems, financial systems to make sure the store is well supplied the data transaction is precisely accurately processed. So there's a lot of data behind the scenes to make this a successful operation. And the one thing I want to point out is that makes Chick-fil-A is a little bit unique in terms of restaurant operation is because we do not have a situation where a lot of other global enterprise has, which they have multiple diverse systems that they inherited, they have to integrate them. We don't have a stack on SQL Server, a stack on another type of technology where you have to combine them together. Because Chick-fil-A is a central, focused on chicken fast food restaurant. And it's a family-owned business. And Chick-fil-A, another thing is we own all the technology deployed in the store, from the point-of-sale system to the network, to back-end office system, to database, to payroll system. What that translates into is we don't have this difficulty of trying to stitching multiple different systems together. So it's relatively very uniform. And a lot of people know Chick-fil-A in the US as a great restaurant, great food, great customer service, and a very clean place to eat. But people didn't realize, hey, Chick-fil-A is also a very advanced and highly innovative technology places. So these are just some call out of the bullets that we've been doing behind the scenes. And each day we handle terabytes of petabytes of data in the house. There's a lot of real-time transactions happening throughout the chain. And in our backend office, our data scientists on the platform that our team supports, they were training over 1 million models a day to accurately make sales predictions and then make recommendations for customers to pick in their order system. And I'm pointing out here, we also have a homogeneous hardware configuration, and we are constantly innovating in terms of deploying new technology to the store. So a lot of you have probably read the article was published several years ago on the edge devices that we use to gather the online IoT data. That is one example. And the other things we actively try out is in the generative AI space, using robots to do delivery. And there's tons of things going on with Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, one thing I'll add there too, Tony, especially on that last point there, the constant innovation and utilization of cutting edge technology. You don't really think about this when you think about Chick-fil-A, but when you see these long lines at the restaurant, when you go and you try to make your order and you see how quickly those things move, or you see how your fries are always cooked perfectly and your chicken's always cooked perfectly, this is all driven by data. Like it's all data that's getting collected and being consumed that lets them make it as optimal as possible. The other thing is, Chick-fil-A works with a lot of really cutting-edge technology, and you may be seeing things on TikTok that are happening that we probably can't talk about, but there's a lot of things happening there. But we work really closely with partners, like with DBT Labs. We work really closely with them. We work really closely with Databricks. You're going to hear about the architecture here in a minute. But we work really closely with them and get feedback, and we think we influence the roadmap. They at least make us think we are in terms of where it's going, and so they're making changes to the product. Literally, we're giving real-time feedback, and then they're making changes to the product as we're giving it to them, advancing it, and we think opening up more opportunities for several of you to be able to experience some of these as well.
That's a great call out. It sounds like the two guys are standing here bragging about Chick-fil-A, but it's actually true. This has always been our experience working with cloud providers. Because of the reputation the business built up, so we realized a lot of our vendors, suppliers, cloud providers like Amazon, AWS, Databricks, and DBT Lab, they were very eager to work with us. Not only they're eager to work with Chick-fil-A, they actually gave us the top guns. So in this working relationship, it's truly partnering. They listen to us, and I've been working with AWS for several years now. There were several Redshift releases. The feature came from us. So when they first came out, they would tell us, hey, that was because you guys were asking for it. Now it's GA now. That's just an example of how Chick-fil-A, as a technology side of the things, it's not just a chicken restaurant. Behind the scenes, Another personal testimony I can share with you is when I first joined Chick-fil-A 14 years ago, I was blown away by the amount of smart people on the team. I wasn't expecting that. I thought, hey, a restaurant company probably not quite as advanced in technology, but I was just completely wrong. I was being proven completely wrong. I was constantly being amazed by the quality of the people that we were being blessed to hire. So next here, I'll just briefly talking about since I'm from the analytic engineering team, this is the mission. Our mission is we would like to empower data engineers with a robust framework, instilling confidence that their work meets with high enterprise standards. It's scalable and supportable. There's a lot of things we're going to unpack from this through our talk. And the emphasis here is, as you mentioned, we didn't say what particular technology stack we marry to or we subscribe to. So we have a famous saying of, hey, you marry the mission, but you date the methods. So the methods can change, can adapt. The mission is always, hey, we as a mature data organization, we should be really focusing on how can we scale, have a mature process. There are just three legs to. You have people, technology, and the process. The people you can hire, the technology can always evolve, but the process is really truly something you have to invest in on. And our goal is to say we need to have a process, have a set of framework and templates, however that framework is built. It could be on Terraform, it could be on Ensemble, it could be a homegrown Python code that everybody uses. But the goal is when you apply this framework, you have confidence that your team adopting this framework can produce things that is scalable and supportable. And you know that can meet SLA. So that's our mission, and we stick to this mission. We constantly change our methodologies, but we will stick to this mission. In terms of, let's get some water. Team structure inside Chick-fil-A, as Dustin will show you later in the architecture diagram, we kind of have this emerged into a federated mesh data architecture. And accordingly, with this federated mesh data architecture, a lot of our actual day-to-day analytic engineering development needs, based on the framework and standard we built out, those actual work are happening. The practitioners are in individual line of business. So as the practitioners are building out their data products, meeting the data needs, for example, supply chain, financial services, restaurant development, in terms of data, we call them data portfolios. There's a Conway law saying that sometimes your software code structure reflects your organizational structure. We try to stay away from that pitfall. We try to say, let's just group our data, serve our online lines of business. Let's forget about how the team is actually organized organizationally, but these meets the line of business requirements. And within data portfolios, engineers are building data products, following the standards. So this can show you as a high level how we can conceptually how we can structure the team as we delivering data services. Next.
There we go. All right. Now we can start getting into some of the meat of the technical and start talking about some of the things that we've done. So Tony just talked about the org structure of how it's created, and the org structure is important to understand when you start thinking about the architecture, because it does kind of work, as he mentioned, in a federated data mesh sort of architecture. So these are the services that we're primarily using. These aren't the full list, but kind of in the scope of DBT. We are, after all, a DBT conference. So within the technical architecture, you have the code, which the coding framework, as you guys are all familiar with, is DBT. The reason you see multiple line items there is because those different projects are split out across various pods. So you have various pods who have their own project, their own Databricks instance that they're working on. We're using Databricks for compute, so everything within Databricks, or at least most of the stuff that's in Databricks, is all external tables, so it's reading out to S3. And then those S3 files and things are all managed through an in-house built product called the Data Exchange. So the Data Exchange is like a governance layer. It controls like permissioning, access. It has some cataloging aspects to it. It stores a lot of metadata, but it's a homegrown solution that sits on top of the data lake. Chick-fil-A actually was one of the early adopters of Lakehouse before Lakehouse kind of became a big thing, and now everyone's starting to adopt it. And they worked pretty closely with vendors kind of early on to structure that. But they built this data exchange system to sit on top of it because at the time, nothing existed that could manage those things. It was very difficult to manage all of these things out in storage. And then through that, so data comes in. A lot of teams are building data products that are getting shared with other teams, and that's where the mesh aspect comes into play. So this data gets written out to the data lake, and then the data exchange has the UI layer that can control access, and we can make that data accessible through another team. So as Tony talked about in the team structure, if you've got a finance team and you've got a pod underneath there, and they're building a data set that maybe needs to be consumed by a marketing team, they can go request access to that data set directly through the data exchange, and then that data set will show up within their Databricks workspace for them to be able to consume. So because everything is out on S3, we can access this data a lot of multiple different ways without actually having to move it. So a lot of teams are building data products, they're shipping them into the data exchange, and then they're shipping back out, and teams are consuming those.
In terms of the medallion architecture, all the data, gold data is in the data exchange, and it's shared across the enterprise. So this is our current version of data exchange was built on AWS S3. It's not a very much distributed yet. It's a little bit more centralized. That's just the evolution phase of this technology. Everything you see here is not, it's still being actively going through adaptation, evolution, and changing. This just shows the concept. How we are building the data exchange can be modified and optimized. But the concept of having a data exchange to facilitate the collaboration, the data governance, that's the key behind this whole idea.
Yep. And then from a consumption standpoint, it's ThoughtSpot, Tableau, the two services being used. And then we do use things like Athena to go and query the data. We were doing Lakehouse Lite with Redshift, really up until Unity Catalog. So the Unity Catalog, I think those implementations just finished, right, Tony?
That's right.
So we've been working over that over the past several months, maybe year, to get that done. So, but now predominantly it's Tableau, ThoughtSpot is what's consuming this data of the data products we're building through DBT. All right, so before we get into some of the lessons learned as we started to grow this at scale, I'll tell you what scale actually means. So we'll set a baseline here. So within Chick-fil-A, there are over 40 DBT projects that are in production across Chick-fil-A. So if you think back at the pod structure, usually there's some pods that may have multiple projects, but for the most part, those are one-to-one with the different pods that we have. We have over 200 plus individual contributors. So these are people who've actually made a commit into a DBT project. So there's over 200 unique individuals who have done that. We have over 3,000 developed models across Chick-fil-A. A bulk of those comes from, we have one team who's well represented here with the supply chain team who has a lot of those models, but 3,000 across all the various projects of things that are getting built. And then as Tony mentioned earlier when we were talking about just setting the stage, there's over 2 petabytes of data that is accessible through DBT to be able to pull in, transform, and be able to use. So just to give you guys a little scope there on what we mean when we have scale, and maybe some of you guys are looking at this like, man, that's small compared to what we're doing, and maybe that's the case. Love to talk to you and learn about some lessons learned. All right, so diving into the meat of this and starting looking at some of the lessons that we've learned, we've kind of talked about this one a little bit. So how we operate at scale and work together. So the data exchange, which we talked about quite a bit shortly ago, enables our domain experts to take what they have built and share it with other teams. So you have pods, they're building data products, they're writing these into the data exchange, they're getting consumed out. As of right now, Chick-fil-A is not using the mesh capabilities, the DBT mesh capabilities, but it's something we are looking at. But largely, the data exchange is already playing that role for us. And at least previously, I know there was a big announcement made yesterday in the keynote, the cross-platform support. That was a limiting factor to us because each of the team were using their own workspaces, and at least prior, you were limited. You needed to be on the same data store, which we weren't able to do. But the data exchange here, it allows us to encourage cross-team collaboration, which allows us to reduce code redundancy. We don't have teams building the same thing over and over and over. I think this is something we're still getting better at and still learning from. It's not perfect, but it's something that we strive to do. We try to eliminate multiple versions of the same truth. So we're having, again, something we're getting better at here, looking at our master data management strategy. How do we get data where we only have to build it once and we can get that shared to the teams, and how can they find it? And then lastly, by teams coming together and working collaboratively, it decreases resource utilization and spend. And when you're talking about things at this scale, like you're in your small company, yeah, maybe if you have a few extra models built or data duplicated, et cetera, it's not a big deal. But at a company like Chick-fil-A, where you have a bunch of different workspaces and a bunch of stuff there, when you're doing inefficient computing, it's big numbers that go into that you're trying to tune down. Potentially tuning a model could save you thousands, 10,000s of dollars per month. So it's something we really try to do. We want teams to build things once and then consume and work with them. There we go. The next point here is the speed to delivery. So you guys probably already know all about the benefits of DBT. So I'm not going to go through every little bullet point list here. But if I could summarize to you the number one benefit that DBT brings, it's this top line. And that's that DBT significantly reduces the engineering overhead and allows our team to focus their attention on bringing business value. That is the number one thing, in my opinion, of why you should be using DBT. It takes a lot of the engineering overhead out. So if some of you guys, I know I see a lot of young folks in the crowd here, but if you guys have built data warehouses in the past where you built it in store procedures and you had to orchestrate store procedures, you know through this list how much of a pain this stuff was to build. Like, you put a lot of work into it. And I can remember back having teams of 40, 50 engineers that were working for me and us building this framework, and then going to another company where I was able to build something and doing the same stuff with like 2 or 3 people because I didn't have to build all these additional frameworks around what I was doing. So with DBT, specifically with Chick-fil-A, when we implement these, the teams are not having to worry about all this additional engineering stuff that needs to happen. Instead, they get to focus on the business and the business logic and the transformation logic associated with that so that we can ship and send data products faster. While I don't have numbers for you, I wish I could give you these numbers on the efficiency that it's gained. One thing I can tell you is we are completing over 500 pull requests per month, just to kind of give you an idea of how much stuff we are pushing and deploying and the teams are doing. I won't say us because the teams, they're actually working these projects, are building. But it is very, very efficient, and it really allows us to move very, very quickly to do that. Got to hit the button a few times. All right, so me and Tony talk about this all the time. I know there's some Chick-fil-A folks in here. If you've talked to me, you have heard me talk about the data model probably more than you ever want to hear me talk about the data model. But this is a very, very important concept. So in the context of DBT, I'll say this. One of the number one, it's not even maybe, it is the number one thing that I think teams miss when using DBT is they don't think about their data model. One of the big benefits of DBT is so easy to get started. If you know SQL, you can go and get started with it. It's also, I think, one of its biggest downfalls as well, because people tend to go, they get a request from the business, and their first instinct is to go and just start developing. Yeah. And we've had teams do that. I've worked with other customers before where we've had teams that do that. They just go and build, and they're building, and everything is great. And then a year down the road, they stop and look at their project, and they're like, our jobs are running for hours. We have hundreds of models. We have the same code reproduced multiple times throughout our project, and it's very inefficient. And they're like, we need help, which is great. If you're a consultant, this is the great place to be, right? Like you love when teams do this because it gives you work. But the data model itself, in my opinion, is the most important aspect that you can do when working with DBT. It's easy to get caught up in the features because there's so many cool features to be able to do there, to do in DBT and things to use. But those things are usually pretty flexible to be able to do. Like, I know we put a big emphasis on project structure. Anyone that I know that's used DBT, it's like one of the biggest hurdles to get over when you start using it. Like, how do I structure the project? But a year or two when you're down the road and you've used it, you're like, you know what? Really, that wasn't that big of a deal. But the data model itself is something that can be very difficult to change. At Chick-fil-A particularly, we follow a medallion naming. At least most of the teams follow medallion naming. Some of them will follow a different one. So the way that we structure our projects is, so we have our raw data, which is stored in our bronze layer. So that's just source data, or that's data that's coming from another team. We have our silver layer, which is our intermediate transformation layer, where we just make transformations and do that. And then we have our gold layer, which is our dimensional data. So DBT really thrives as a batch processing service. You can do it real time, and I'm sure there's some people here that can give you some great use cases to talk about real time, but most of our use case is done through batch processing. And because we're building data to serve up through our BI tools, things like ThoughtSpot, Tableau, et cetera. When you're doing that, putting it into a dimensional model, and again, it's debatable, but I think it's the best way that you can put it in, you can do it, which is basically separating it into facts and dimensions. I'm not going to beat this horse to death, but in terms of dimensional modeling, I think the facts and dimensions, those definitions have gotten a little bit skewed over the years. Yeah. And people call them things that I don't particularly think that's really what they are, when they're really just a one big table underneath the covers, where they're just putting data into one table and serving it up to an analyst. What we try to do at Chick-fil-A is we want a foundational model that enables flexibility in our analytics. Use this data for multiple things, as opposed to building it for specific needs. So this is something really, really important to us.
Yeah, and along the same lines, I would just add, echoing what Dustin mentioned earlier, we do notice there's a tension between speed of development versus take time to hone the skills of doing proper data modeling. And there was a time when, back in the day, when you have even adding 1 gig of storage, you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars. You have to have a director sign it, and you purchase it. You wait for that thing to be shipped into your server room. You mount it on the rack. You gain 1 gig of storage. Those are the days not that long ago. But with cloud coming in, storage is dirt cheap. Compute is dirt cheap. And then time to market is ever more important than by the day. So then you have, hey, I need a campaign. I need some product to be developed quickly and faster into the production. So you end up seeing a lot of things being quickly POC'd, and then from POCs go straight to production in the cloud without any proper thought of, hey, how can it be stored? Is there SLA defined? Is the data properly modeled? Can I support it? Then lo and behold, before you realize it, people are using it, and the data is growing. There's nobody taking a closer look at it. You're accumulating a whole lot of technical debt. Then you are forced to stop, reach the bottleneck. You have to say, hey, I have to really go back to square one to reinvestigate my data modeling and then catch up, clean up that technical debt. I didn't speak this out of vacuum. Chick-fil-A have this kind of similar problem ourselves. Because we used to be a very fast, small, and nimble company, and things got innovated really fast and quick. But after some time, you realize, oh, I have to pause. I have to make sure, hey, go back to square one, go through the cycle, and do it right. So I couldn't emphasize more enough than this. These are the basic foundations. And even in the cloud age, Kimball still matters. Several years ago, in one of the Coalesce talk, there was a couple of gentlemen presented the exact same topic. Is Kimball still matter? The answer is yes. So I just want to point it out. And this is, if you don't forget anything that we talked today, this is the thing you want to remember. In your slow down first. Even you can do parallel, but don't. This is the step you cannot ignore. It will come back and haunt you later down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. No, great call out, Tony. One last thing I'll mention on this slide. I know we're getting really close to time here. Mm-hmm. You'll see that little red bar around there. So we use DBT for really two use cases. Sometimes these can be the same team. Sometimes they can be different teams. But the red layer typically kind of falls on our people with more data engineering skills, guys that are comfortable, or people who are really comfortable with data modeling and understanding how to structure data and take business requirements and create structure. The platinum one, which not technically part of, I think, the medallion naming, but it's at least one that Chick-fil-A has adopted, is another layer that sits on top that's typically more of your analyst, so they'll consume data from the underlying data model. And so a lot of times these are one big tables, or these are views that sit on top of it. It basically allows you to just pull all your data together before you pick it up into a BI tool, so you don't have to do a lot of your transformations or joins and things within your BI tool. It's kind of mixed though, but that foundational data layer is extremely important to the message that we give the teams and try to work with teams on. Not going to run through all of these. These are some of the benefits of data modeling. So maximize analytical flexibility. We don't want to build data sets to be consumed by teams for a single need, because we have to constantly make changes to those, or business requirements change and we have to go back and update those. We want to build things that accomplish things for at least the entire group. So if it's a domain area, we think about how we structure that in a way that it gives the analyst more opportunity to be able to do stuff. So dimensions have lots of different attributes beyond what they need for just the specific needs. Fact tables have lots of measurable columns that look at different things for lots of different needs. Dimensional models, easy to consume data from. The transformation side can get pretty hard and difficult, but it's simple for the analyst and it's simple for the businesses to be able to use. Flexible to business changes, fast data retrieval. A lot of these BI tools are built to sit on top of dimensional models. They're very efficient in consuming data from those. Reducing code and data redundancy, maximizing efficiency and performance with our BI tools. And then the last one, improve AI usability. I'll throw this out there. I know AI is buzzy. There's some sessions here about it. Anywhere you go, you're going to hear about AI. Can't have AI without good data engineering. You need good data structures in place to be able to do that. So part of the reasons that we talk a lot about data modeling, there's so much more once you get past that foundational data model that it opens up, and AI is a big one. So you start building models against it. You want really clean, well-structured data. If you're using LLMs, again, same thing. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of bad data, and you're going to struggle to get those things in production, and it's not going to work very well. But definitely need good data engineering. Go ahead, Tony.
All right, so this is kind of getting to the end. I go back to what the discipline that I talk about, the process maturity, and how do we operate at the scale at Chick-fil-A. So a lot of times when engineers, when they say, hey, I'm done, you ask them, what do you mean you are done? He means, hey, I'm done development. But for us, done is not done. When you're actually in production, it's supportable, you know the SLA is measurable, and somebody's watching it. So in other words, you don't want to get called in the middle of a Saturday afternoon when your kid's soccer practice and saying, hey, your pipeline broke. How did I find out? Because the customer called your director. So you can rush home and then bring up your laptop and finish fixing the problem. You want to prevent that, truly understand site reliability engineering, data quality control, define your proper custom metrics. This all happen at the front end, not in the end. You talk about it, you sit this with your customer, how soon do you want to see this data? What is the query time? How many times this pipeline can break within 6 months period? Oh, those are the things you want to probe that out of your business user's head so that you know, hey, when you say, my data pipeline is doing a good job, or my ML model is making accurate predictions, or my data quality is good, you have quantifiable, measurable data to show that. So the way we do it is we encourage our software engineers and engineer leads to have a conversation, identify those, and define them as custom metrics. They are custom metrics that's telling you these metrics it's like a health indicator whether I'm doing a healthy data pipeline, regardless whether it's a DBT project or Databricks project or Airflow project. These 5 pillars of analytic engineering framework you see listed there is a mandatory requirement. It doesn't matter which technology you use, these are the principles you have to follow. Once you have those custom metrics defined, identified, we encourage our engineers to leverage our platform framework, a few lines of code, have them written to a time series database. And then on top of the time series database, we leverage Grafana, which is a very easy to use out-of-the-box UI tool on top of time series database to show this dashboard so that our managed ops team can do 24/7 support. We have a global partner who has a global team of 27 engineers across 3 continents. They will establish a run book for over 4,000 data sets, hundreds of the pipelines, DBT job, Databricks job, Airflow job, machine learning job. They're monitoring 24/7. Whenever there's an alert they get received, because the alert is off the threshold you defined. If you're saying, hey, I'm expecting this batch file to be finished loading within 30 seconds or within 30 minutes, just so that next day report is fresh. However, it's approaching 29 minutes, it's still running. Then the support team will get alert. They will look into it. Hey, is it really completing within 30 minutes? If not, should I restart it? So there are people actually watching it. They also have a standard onboarding checklist and runbook. This runbook constantly evolves. The global team is, as I mentioned earlier, one is in India, one is in Latin America, and the rest of them are scattered across the US. In ChickfilA, we call this around the sun, chase the sun support, as long as the sun, so that you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night. One of the things that I want to point out, echo my point earlier, we don't want to be too prescriptive. For example, the second point, the documentation as code. 2 years ago, when we implement documentation as code, we have a utility comes in, we require every single project in GitHub must have a clearly written README file that identifies the owner, stake owner. When engineers load off, this file needs to be updated and checked in as code so that whoever come on to support this project later can have an idea of the history of the project and where they can go to get more information. So this rule still applies. But today, when we hear how DBT Explorer can do, then you realize a lot of this information can be complemented, can be accomplished by doing a very good AI-generated DBT documentation. That's fine. But that's just echoing how important it is for engineers to think about documentation before you even start. To have a utility-generated scaffolded the template for your documentation before you, I need to create a Word document. Once I'm done, nobody will ever going to read it because nobody can find it. So those are the, in my opinion, these are the process maturity is truly what can enable you can scale well. The opposite of that would be you will be responsible for more and more DBT projects. You get exhausted. Nobody's doing the support for you, and you will never be done because, hey, when things break, you're still on the hook to fix them.
Yep. All right, got a few minutes. We're a few minutes over. We'll get through. We got a couple more slides, and then we'll wrap up.
So this is a Grafana dashboard I mentioned earlier. I took screenshots on the. We built this earlier. In the future, maybe this can get loaded into the DBT's internal observability panel. How this is built is by we have a utility that makes a bunch of DBT API calls and grab all the job run information. How many has failed? How many has run? What are the job name? When you click in, there's a whole bunch of data down there. The owners who run this, how many tests has run, how many tests failed, what environment they are, and our team monitor this. You do have to create this is kind of like homegrown at this moment, but we are open to evolve this. But the principle is we are sticking to this monitoring, proactive monitoring, defining app monitoring around SLA. Yeah.
Yep.
So quick recap of lessons learned. And as I mentioned very early on, why Chick-fil-A is such a good restaurant company. The things easy. Good food, good customer service. And for somebody picky like me, clean bathrooms, right? So there's nothing magical. There's nothing mystic about a company being successful. Same thing with the analytics engineering side. Do we have any secret sauce? No, we don't. I wish I can have a code that's written for you, can last for 10,000 years and just use it, can solve all your problem. That never happens. There's always smart enough people for you to find. There's always good technology constantly changing for you to adopt. You need to focus on process. That's the process. And then the process tied to your company's culture. So these three things, good data modeling is key, design for scalability and operational excellence. You need to think about operations first. Think about what it would look like, this will go production, otherwise I'm wasting my time. And then reusability. You don't want, in a decentralized, mesh-driven world, you don't want two teams investing efforts trying to invent the same thing at the same time. It doesn't matter which tool you use, so that's just not good practice. So those are the things we would love to, through our journey, we think is very important. These are the things, the principles that we should keep in mind. The other tools and technologies and platforms are just facilitating those things. They will get easier. Technology will get better and better. People will get smarter and smarter. But those the process is where you need to stewardship for. So that's pretty much our talk. And in the last end, I just want to, for those who are working for Chick-fil-A, you guys are the practitioners. I mentioned you so many times. Would you mind stand up and let people recognize you? Don't be shy.
So we'll hang around for questions.
Yeah.
You can also talk to any of those folks that just stood up. They can answer a lot of questions for you as well, but we'll hang around for a little bit. If you want to come chat, we can chat. Yeah, with that, thank you guys so much.